Hello and welcome. I'm Bob Lichter, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project for the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I am a member of the Kenosha History Center and have volunteered there since 2015. We hope that you will enjoy these programs. I'm with Steve Nelson, former director of the CYC, Christian Youth Council in Kenosha. Hello, Steve, and welcome.
Glad to be here. It's a long time since I've been in the Southwest Library. They do have more books than I do, though.
They do. Are you originally from Kenosha?
Yes, born and raised. 4114 21st Avenue, right by Jefferson School, Holy Rosary, Washington Bowl. It's a great place to grow up.
Great neighborhood.
Very diverse.
Here.
But mostly Italian.
Mostly Italian,
Yeah,
that
neighbors
neighborhood,
were
sure.
Gallo, Giannini, Aiello, Carlini, Loiso,
All your old friends.
Yeah, all.
After high school in Kenosha, you went to St. Joe's. You were
Went to high school at St. Joe's, yes, and I was fortunate enough to play basketball there, and I was actually recruited by Dick Versace. And he was the coach there when I was in grade school, and we saw him all the time. Come to St. Joe's, come to St. Joe's. Yes, yeah, coach. Yeah. Well, when I got there, he left. Okay. He went, took a job in Chicago, and then moved on into college and pros and everything else. So I ended up playing for Dan Gibrillo, excuse me, Dan Gibrillo and Bob Terrio. But we had fun. Mm-hmm. Played in the first St. Joe's Tremper game. 50 years ago.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
1973.
It was 1972, December, and yeah, I'm class of 73. So shout out to all the alumni of 73. See you in September at the reunion.
Then on to college.
UW Stevens Point, played there, and then couldn't wait to leave Stevens Point because it's just too small. You know, Kenosha's small enough, you know, but it's not, you know, it's not Chicago or Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. Well, Point was at the other end of the scale. It was just, you know, it was nice going into the woods and stuff, but I was ready to come home. And when I got back, I got a job at Snap-on with my sister worked at Snap-on. She goes, "You need a job?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have no money, no house, no car. Young child, yeah." So worked at Snap-on, and it was quite the learning experience. But it was worth it, because now that you had a job, you could have a house, you could have a car, you could go on vacation, you know, have another child, and but it wasn't easy, you know, it was tough work.
What was your job at Snap-on Tools?
Everybody kind of had multiple things. Some days you'd be in the polishing department. Some days you'd be in the plating department. Some days it was, here's a broom, you know, clean up the area, whatever. You know, a typical factory, but mostly plating, and it's where they put the finishing touch on the tools. And it was an interesting process. And man, Snap-on made a lot of tools. they had a lot of tools going through every day, and you know, made a lot of friends there, and to still have them to this day. But when my life kind of changed, I decided, nah, this is time for a change too, and I ended up taking a job in pretty much the social sector, which I was first step in. Went to work for the Private Industry Council, mm-hmm. which was a federal program, federal job training program, and we dealt mostly with youth, but there were adults, there were ex-offenders, so we were covering the whole gamut, and it was very rewarding work, because you were helping people, you were helping kids, you were helping people getting back into school, get jobs, and got to meet some interesting people. one of the guys I used to work with was Senator Bob Wirch. He was working at Job Service at the time, and we had a contract with Job Service, and I was kind of like his boss. You know, he reported to me contract management and all that good stuff. And also got to know Ron Stevens very well, and Ron Stevens at the time was the director of the Christian Youth Council. And we had a youth employment program with them, and got to know Ron real well. And then so when he was at a point where he was stepping away and doing something else, he pretty much was advocating for me to take over at the CYC. And it was like, yeah, the CYC grew up there, jumping on the trampolines in the Martin building, you know, shooting hoops, whatever, all the brothers in the neighborhood. And so it was a very interesting period of time. But again, you've learned a lot, and it helped me with other things down the road, and just met some great people, very, very competent, efficient people that knew how to run programs, knew how to help kids. You know, guys like Sam Sauceda, Gary Vargas, Dennis Bedford, Linda Osborne, just wonderful people. Deb Cutts took care of all the money. I don't want to leave anybody out because they'll probably call me up and yell at me or something. My good friend Beverly Jones was our office manager. Just took care of everything. So I get to the CYC, right, and I sit down and gather everybody around the table. Okay, what do you all do so I know not to get in your way? You know, and it was a very interesting time. And it kind of led into different connections with different people in the community. And one of the guys I got to know very well was Wally Graffin, who was the director of the Boys and Girls Club, which at the time was relatively new. We're talking mid-90s, maybe even a little earlier, because the original Boys and Girls Club was a small office building on 38th Avenue and 50th Street. And it just was pretty much an office, and they had some programs there, but it's nothing like it is now, post-merger. And Wally and I got to know each other because we served on a couple of different committees together. And one day he approached me and said, the Milwaukee Brewers have a program called Little Hitters. I'm trying to remember all the details, but he said they'd give us equipment, balls, uniforms, everything else, fund the program. But Wally didn't have a park. Well, the CYC just happened to have Carroll Rickley Field, well, by Stoker Elementary on, what's that, 67th and 60th Avenue. And I said, I got a field. Tell them to give you the stuff. Let's do it. So Wally and I worked together on that, and we were putting the bases out and chalking the lines and everything to run a baseball program for kids. And it was during that time that the discussion gradually started about the merger of the CYC and the Boys and Girls Club, because I think the Boys and Girls Club, it's their nature to be a little bit bigger and to expand. You're a national program. They're all over the United States, and that's what they wanted to do in Kenosha. And so we started having the conversations about that, and it was probably about a year of meeting secretively at Wally's office so no one would see me. And we were talking about it and putting plans together. And we approached a couple of board members, and they both liked it and thought it was a great idea. So the process got going more seriously. And it's interesting because the initial target area for development was not the site that it's at now on 52nd and 14th Avenue. It actually was a couple blocks down the road from where the original PYC, Protestant Youth Council.
And that building's long gone.
It's long gone. It's, yeah, there's nothing but grass there now. And but the original target area was the old Bonnie Haynes on 30th Avenue and 52nd Street, which had a ton of land. You could build facilities, build baseball diamonds, build football fields, outdoor basketball courts, playground, you name it. And just to make a long story short, there were citizens in that area that did not want to see that. I won't name any names, but so the site target moved to the present site. And when it was finalized, I stayed on there for 2 years as Wally's associate director. And it was again a very interesting time as that was being put together and they were growing and expanding. And right after the merger, we were camping out for a period of time in the old Lincoln Center, right across from the Brass. Sure. And we were watching the Brass come down through office windows as
1999.
As it was happening. And it's just seeing that process was very interesting. And to that point, the stuff that has gone on in the development in Kenosha from my youth to now, just amazing. My Uncle John, who lives in California, had been gone and hadn't been back for a long time. And he came back and we took him down there and he was like, wow, he couldn't believe it. Where's Lakefront Stadium? It's gone. Where's Chrysler on the docks? Gone. Now it was all a development and beautiful condos down there, parks, you name it. It's just fantastic. He couldn't believe it. Took him to eat at Manja's, which sadly doesn't exist anymore. Great place. And he's like, boy, this is great. This could be on the wharf in San Francisco, because he lived just north of San Francisco. And he was just truly amazed. And as a lifelong resident, except Stevens Point and 6 months in LA, it's very impressive. And Kenosha leadership needs to be applauded for that, because this is different. And just yesterday, to think about what we have, my wife and I took the dogs walking down by the Penoyer band shell. She plays in the Kenosha Pops band, plays clarinet, very good. And we were walking the dogs around there, and the Pops band had put up a park bench in honor of Frank Germanaro, longtime conductor of the band, who passed away, I think January, I think it was.
2023?
Just recently. Great guy, great Kenosha citizen. Everybody knows Frank Germanaro. And so we're walking through the parking lot, all Illinois plates. I'm thinking to myself, geez, don't they have any beaches in Illinois? Everybody's coming here? So just a suggestion for Kenosha leadership. Maybe if you could have an out-of-town plate, you should pay a fee, but just a suggestion. Nothing, But, and then you look at the History Center, which you and I are involved in. And quite frankly, folks, Bob does a great job with the History Center, leads the historic walking tours. Check it out if you haven't done so. There's our little PSA for the time, but we serve together on the events committee. Yes. And the director down there, Chris Allen, fabulous job, great job running that place and expanding things and programs and artifacts. Our good buddy Carl Frederick,
sure,
with the events. Ron Luttrell, who's the head lighthouse man. You want to know something about a lighthouse? ask Ron.
Or Shipwreck, or
Yeah.
it's a great team.
And it's really, I don't think people are as aware of that place as they should be. Not that we are getting off track here, but we're talking about the History Center, which is obviously important to both of us. But it's really a kind of like a hidden treasure down on the island. I think a lot of people coming in from out of the area, they know the museum, they know the Civil War Museum, they know the dinosaurs, but do they know the History Center as much as they
Getting
should?
across that harbor channel.
Yeah, and but it's really, you know, you want to really get back and see some history. That's a place to go to as well. Come to the chili cook-off in October. Stay tuned. We'll have a time and date for you coming up. Okay, that's done. I'm done with commercials, Bob.
So, how long did you stay at the CYC then?
It was about, well, eight years, and then 2 with the Boys and Girls Club. So about 10 years. Yeah.
And your primary responsibilities there again?
I was more hands-on with programming and scheduling and direct supervision and kicking idiot fans out on Saturday mornings, you know, it's that type of thing. But just the daily operations, you needed a lot of attention because there was a lot of stuff going on. I mean, you had all the sports leagues, you had employment programs, we had gang prevention programs. There was just a lot of stuff going on. And whether it was full-blown games on Saturday or open gyms on a Wednesday night, you know, you had to be there. And again, our people were very, very good at that because, you know, all you got to do is ask some kids from that era growing up, you know, how did that place influence you? You hear it all the time. You hear it now with the Boys and Girls Club. Sure. It's very important. In a city of our size, it's crucial because you need to have these programs, and that facility down there is fantastic. And again, that's another thing. If people haven't seen it, been in it, you need to check it out. Fantastic gymnasium areas, indoor soccer areas, just space and playgrounds in the back. So many programs going on, and you might have to get somebody from the Boys and Girls Club to sit in this chair one of these days. They got a lot to talk about.
Good point.
More of the present than the past, and you know, again, not wanting to offend my wife, we can go live in the past for a while, but when that first started, it was just amazing. And I wasn't there for that building. I had left before that move had been made. That building was constructed, thanks to tremendous generosity of a lot of sponsors. I won't name all the names, but they know who they are, and it's just, you know, it's fantastic. And I have referee buddies that come up from Illinois, Chicago area, because the International Small Fry will play, Kenosha Small Fry will play at Boys and Girls Club, and they come up and they're like, man, it's unbelievable, you know, because some of the places that we've gone to, I referee basketball, and down there, not quite as good, you know, more of like Hoosiers. But so, you know, even the folks coming in from out of town, very impressed with that facility.
It sounds like you really made some lifelong friendships and
Oh, yeah.
relationships through all that.
Yeah, through sports, through different employment endeavors. And I'm one of those that I think they said the average American has like 7 different jobs nowadays. I'm in that category, right. Yeah.
And you went from the CYC to other very high-level leadership positions.
I left the Boys and Girls Club for the opportunity to be the director at the Kemper Center. And again, it's just a tremendous place. you talk about history, the history of that place is just amazing. And we were fortunate because when we were young, we had some buddies that lived across the street. Tommy Heller, for one, played basketball at St. Joe's. You know Tom Heller very well. And whenever Tom would call up and say, yeah, Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock, we're hooping it at the Simmons Auditorium at Kemper. Yes, we were there. And just, you got the feel of the place. And at the time, it was still an all-girls private school. So we got to meet many nice young ladies from various parts of the country during that. So yes, we'd always go to play at the Kemper. It was always
I think
fun.
the school closed in 1975, I believe.
Something like that.
Somewhere.
Yeah, something like that. But very interesting place, interesting people, but important for that historical backdrop of Kenosha. The Kemper, the Durkee Mansion, the Anderson Art Center. That is a tremendous place. Give them another shout out. Concerts down there coming up. Check the website.
Jazz at the Kemper.
Jazz at Twilight Jazz. So that won't cost you anything, Kemper. Just maybe a free glass of wine.
What were your responsibilities as the director of Kemper then?
A little bit, the day-to-day operations, but mostly fundraising. There was always a lot of fundraising and lobbying going on. Actually, during my time, short time there, shorter than I would have liked, but that's a long story. We're not going to get into that, Bob. Sorry, fans. But a lot of lobbying the county board for more funding, which at the time we were successful in getting. Because it's technically Kemper is a county park funded through the county. And again, there were good people there. They knew what they were doing, taking care of the facilities and things like that. So one thing that we did try to do was get more and more of the alumni from the Kemper to come back. And actually we made a connection with, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but we started tours, and getting tours going there. Plus they were always the curious, looking for the paranormal, which Kemper obviously is.
There are a lot of
very
stories there.
Well, a couple, yeah. But one made me a believer, and it was interesting. It just was a very warm day, and I went into a certain part of the building that really probably wasn't visited too often, and all of a sudden it was very cold, and doors were opening and closing and things like that. So I was like, okay, and I left the room and locked the door and never went back in. But Halloween at the Kemper was a very interesting experience because you believed they were there. They were all over. But there was some legends of nuns drowning and suicides and things like that. And so people truly believed that the spirits were still there.
Then you wound up back at St. Joe's High School.
Yeah. I succeeded Mr. Frank Matrice, who was there forever.
There's an iconic name.
And what a guy. He was one of those classic guys that was tough but fair. And you just respected the hell out of him. And when we were students at St. Joe's, everybody just respected him, and Coach Patrice, he was the guy that gave you a towel after gym class shower. He was great motivator. And it was interesting because when I started refereeing basketball, the very first time I went back to St. Joe's to referee a game, Frank is obviously still there. He's handing you the game check. talking to you? And he said, Steve, you want to donate this check back to St. Joe's? And I'm like, no way, I'm putting it in my pocket. But he was always there for you, just a great guy. And so I was working, well, I left Kemper, and then I ran the Kenosha Literacy Council for a year. And then I worked at Parkside as assistant athletic director, and that's where I was, and I left there to go to St. Joe's.
Okay.
And then handled the transition for 2 years, and then moved on and kind of like ready to just referee and not do much. Always involved with the History Center.
Sure. What about the Kenosha Literary Council?
Well, it was interesting because when I left the Kemper, and quite bluntly, I left not of my own volition, but that's, like I said, that's whole nother story. John Milosauskas, who ran the Job Center and actually was my big boss when I was at the Private Industry Council, was chairman of the board at the Literacy Council. And he says, hey, we need someone to run the Literacy Council. Like, okay, I'm not doing nothing. And it was a fabulous experience. Met people from all over the world. Immigrants that wanted to be here and wanted to do it the right way. Every single one of them was doing it the right way, had the paperwork, taking citizenship classes, and it was very impressive, and they were very enlightening to meet because they had such love and admiration and so happy to be here. You can't explain how happy they were to be here. And when they took the citizenship test and became a citizen, that was better than being born. And I mean, we'd have parties there, and it was fantastic. But I left there to go to Parkside, and then Parkside to St. Joe's. So it's been an interesting journey. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing I did, which gave me a great perspective of Kenosha, was working for the Kenosha News. Being out in the field every day, every morning, and if you didn't get your paper, I would bring it to you. And it gave me a lot of time to read because you obviously weren't doing it every second, but worked for some very good people. Mr. Brown was gone by then, but I got to know him during my CYC days. Actually, he was one of my biggest advocates. Was Howard Brown, Ron Stevens, very good friend of mine, local attorney, Tom Aiello, who I was on 21st Avenue, he was on 23rd Avenue. And our other good buddy, Joe Carlini, was on 22nd. So we were like boom, 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 right here, right in a row. And, but it was really something because people at the news still would talk about Howard. He had been gone, but people would still talk about him. And just, what a great gentleman he was, what a great boss he was. And obviously the newspaper world is a little different now.
Even the thought of working at a newspaper now we're sitting here in 2023, so much news is online, TV, things like that. The thought of holding a newspaper in your hand.
Which I did this morning, because I'm a newspaper guy, so is my wife. Are you done with the paper yet? No, not yet, honey.
Not yet.
Hang on, still reading the sports page.
Yeah.
But it is different. And the younger generation obviously is more into the technology, online. Even communication is my daughter. Oh, you don't text me. You're not on Facebook. You don't do Instagram. You don't tweet. You're right. I probably won't do it in my next life either. But, that's what they're into. And my daughter's 42 years old. And then obviously the grandkids, that's a whole different level.
Speaking of technology, over your long 3-4 decades of doing what you did, there's a lot of changes in technology. How did that affect you when you first got when you went from paperwork to...
Oh, this is a computer?
Right, sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
how does this work? How do you turn it on? You know, stuff like that. Actually, I think it was really during my PIC days, the Private Industry Council days, that we started getting introduced to that. And we had very, very competent, smart people in the front office that could handle it. Here, can you type this for me? You know, and that type of thing. But I think I got more in depth at St. Joe's, because everything is being done, scheduling, payment of officials, communication with other schools, you know, it was on computer. So I gradually went from Neanderthal to Cro-Magnon. I was moving up. Now I'm trying to get to Australopithecus, which is the next level up, you know, before I actually hit Homo sapien. You know? But my wife is an expert. Oh, you're not doing that right. Okay, honey, here, sit down. Come and do this for me. But everything we do with officiating is online, scheduling, payment, things like that. I hardly ever talk to the conference commissioner, but I'll get an email, I'll get a text, you know.
Yeah. But at some point in your life you did, you know, with your lifelong love of basketball,
Yeah.
playing at different levels, and then you went into refereeing. How did that come about?
I started refereeing when I was a sophomore in high school, doing intramurals, when there was still such a thing as intramurals. And then one day, my good friend, Joe Loizo, his brother Tom, was refereeing for the CYO. And he grabbed both me and Joe. Let's go. We went to Holy Rosary. Here's a whistle. Here's a shirt. Start refereeing. Okay. Well, that's where we learned. And as I was getting older, going through different levels, you know, I refereed intramurals at Stevens Point, and when I got back, I got serious, and I was fortunate to have some really good mentors. George Becker, one of the great guys, Alex Nigro, Tom Rizzo, Phil Anderson. You know, these guys had all been veteran referees, and just really, you know, here's how you do it, you know, and you just gradually work your way up. And you gotta know, you know, what you're doing. It helped being a player, but you had to get rid of playing instincts and get refereeing instincts. You know, as a referee, you can't call out screens or, you know, stuff like that. And so you progress, and you know, eventually you get different opportunities, and had the opportunity to do some college stuff and opportunity to do some international stuff. And
What was
now I'm on the downslope, backside. Okay. Yeah.
Talk about that, you know, that college level and the international basketball league, you know, it's
fun. But you better be focused, because there's a lot going on. And it's interesting you mentioned that, because in a lot of cases, doing some sixth graders is tougher than doing college guys. And I'm real serious, and guys who referee will know what I'm talking about, because you never know what's going to happen with the younger kids. You know, you don't expect college kids to pick up the ball and start running with it. You know, but in sixth grade, that could happen. And a lot of times, kids don't want to hear the whistle. They'll just keep going, you know. Oh, I don't care about that whistle. You know, I'm just going to keep going after the ball. So in many ways, it's different. The pressures at the higher levels are different than the younger levels, because there's more at stake. You're dealing with coaches a lot more. You know, a lot of times the youth coaches, they don't know how to yell at you correctly, or else they just sit there like this and don't say anything, and hopefully this call will go my way. But it's been very interesting. Met a lot of good friends over the years refereeing from different areas, different countries.
What were, at that level, at international league, where were some of the places you traveled?
Puerto Rico.
Some of the
Yeah,
teams you
Puerto
worked
Rico.
with? Okay.
It was mostly, but we did this international tournament, international small fry, for one. Was used to travel around different cities, and then they settled in Disney World. For quite some years, up until the age of COVID, ruined everything. But it's a great program, youth program. Jeff Milkey in Kenosha is the executive director, and very entertaining, a lot of fun, meet a lot of different people, see different styles. And then we also, back in the day, we did a thing called the International, or the World Youth Festival. And it was teams from all over the world, and that would travel around the country. Well, on a couple different occasions, it was in Milwaukee, a couple times in Chicago, and we had the opportunity to do that. And it was older kids, actually up to college age, because their classifications were like 19 and under, 17 and under, so it's different age classifications. But you could go out and do a game and have Australia playing Finland, and the next game would be Czechoslovakia playing Brazil, things like that. And it was really, you'd see the different styles and meet different people. It was very entertaining. Now it's kind of like I'm more concerned about, I still do games, but I'm more concerned about our organization, recruiting and training young people getting into it, because the officiating business is just like everything else nowadays. It's hard to get good people. And a lot of younger kids are not getting into it. And it's, if you're an athlete, if you're into sports, it's a great opportunity. And I've always felt that when I was done playing sports seriously, there's one of two directions to go to stay close to the games that mean something. You either referee or you coach. Well, coaching, no, sorry. I have enough fun dealing with parents refereeing. I'm not sure I want to deal with them as a coach. So I respect you coaches out there very, very much, believe me. And but it's still a lot of fun. But Bob, after 52 years, them kids keep getting faster. It's not me slowing down, it's them getting faster. Yeah.
Steve, you touched on COVID a little bit. Of course, 2020, 2021, we had the coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah.
Your work, your refereeing, how did that affect you?
We had to make adjustments. There were games played after there was an initial shutdown where games were not played, and then when they picked up, everybody was wearing masks, including referees. And so the referee supply companies, they're ingenious. They come out with a mask where you can put the whistle in. They also had electronic whistles where you could hit a buzzer and nobody could hear it, But then gradually, we got back, last couple years, we've got back to normal. Okay. Yeah.
So just adapted to the conditions.
You adjust. It's like anything. You have to adjust to the circumstances. We adjusted refereeing games when the game changed itself. The three-point shot changed the game. It was a whole different world. When the girls started playing, it was an adjustment. And the girls when they started playing, they were learning. It wasn't what it was going to become. And nowadays, man, there's some really good girls players, especially right here in Kenosha. Young lady at Wilmot, McKenna Johnson, tremendous player. Young lady at Bradford, Nevaeh, I think her name is Nevaeh, pardon me, Nevaeh, but great players. Tremper is good, Shoreland is good. St. Joe's, yeah, they're all.
The sports, high school sports programs in Kenosha.
And you know what you got to do? You got to go back to the CYC, PYC, CYC, Boys and Girls Club. Anytime you see a great high school program, and I don't care where you go. I don't care if you go to Rice Lake. I don't care if you go to La Crosse. I don't care if you go to Antigo. Wherever you go, you're going to have a good feeder program. And that's one thing that Kenosha has been fortunate with in the youth sports. The CYC is the perfect feeder program. Little League, tremendous. Castle with the soccer programs now. The CYC handles the youth football. The people running Little League, tremendous job. I mean, and look at the development of Little League Park on 39th Avenue, just south of Washington Road. Beautiful facility. We've had Little League teams. One of them, I think it was twice, last 3-4 years, there's been 2 different times where a Kenosha team almost got to Williamsport, the Little League World Series, which is, the ultimate. How many professional baseball players have played at Williamsport? So, these people running these programs do a fantastic job, and all you have to do is, look at the results. Trimper in football, Bradford won baseball things. Basketball, St. Joe's got close. It's not, that hasn't been the most successful on a tournament level wise. Softball, Westosha Central, Bradford, that's been great. Soccer teams have been great. It's just, wrestling, volleyball. You look at the feeder programs and say, this is the natural progression. You're going to have success.
Got it. You had the opportunity to do a little radio work too, didn't you, Steve?
Yeah, well, back in the early days of cable, the first entity here was Jones Intercable, and then Time Warner, and I actually started doing a little game broadcasting with none other than Mr. Larry Reitler, and we were doing like the game of the week, either basketball or football or baseball or whatever, and I got to know Larry real well, and I got involved in, okay, how do you do this? I knew how to talk, but when to talk, when not to talk, we got to do a commercial now, all this other stuff. And it was an interesting learning experience. And then in my Parkside days, Parkside used to broadcast men and women basketball on the radio. Started out at LIP and then I think went to RJN. But myself and the former sports information director at Parkside, a fellow named Steve Cradaville, and I were the broadcast team. I was doing play-by-play. He was providing the expert color commentary. And we traveled doing Parkside games for 12 years. And we were going all over the place because Parkside was in the Great Lakes Valley Conference. So we were going to Lewis outside of Chicago. We were going to Indianapolis, Southern Indiana, Quincy, Northern Kentucky, Kentucky Wesleyan, Missouri St. Louis. Love St. Louis. Talk about a cool place to visit in history. The Lewis and Clark Museum, underneath the arch, beautiful museum, great museum. But so we got to travel quite a bit. We got to know a lot of the players pretty good over the years, and actually Coach Jenny Knight, Jenny Kennedy, who's now the athletic director at St. Joe's, and they couldn't have picked the more perfect person than her. She was not playing, but coaching when we were doing the radio. And Jenny was a great interview. Her only problem is that she couldn't beat me at horse. Sorry, Jenny. But, so that program was really fun to cover. And when we started, they were not doing very well, but then they got up, and there were some teams later on with Levante Fenderson, Kyle Clark, Kenosha's Kyle Clark, that were real successful, made the NCAA tournament. So that was a lot of fun too. But now I don't really get out and do too much of that. I used to write kind of like a local sports column for Action Magazine, which is no longer in circulation. Sadly, the fellow who ran it passed away, so that hasn't been out there. But it's kind of the end. It was kind of the end of it, you know, the broadcasting deal. But
Steve, what's your best memories, your best part of your long career?
Well, going back early, as I said, I was fortunate where I grew up. It was very diverse. We had neighborhoods with every color. And we never even thought about that. That didn't even register. I didn't have black friends. I had friends that had different skin pigmentation. You know, they were our friends. You know, the only thing we disagreed upon was what you liked on your pizza. You know, I mean, that was about it. And so having that opportunity to grow up having friends like the Mahone family. They were all the guys were my friends. And an artist to this day is a good friend. And she just got an award, artist, by the way. Congratulations if you watch this. She had Susan B. Anthony Award. So, but we were fortunate like that. And that, I think, gave me a different perspective. And I'm a firm believer in what Martin Luther King said. You judge people by the content of their character. If you're out shooting people and doing this, and you know what? Damn right I don't like you. Simple as that. But that's not the way it works. That's not reality. There's good people. There's people who are not so good. And and if I look at you and say, oh, I don't like you, well then that makes me ignorant. So I was very fortunate, but you know, I think the biggest thing of doing different things and being involved in different community things, it's just the people you meet, the people you get to know.
People.
You know, I've been fortunate. I mean, my wife and I were sitting at Union Park, great fish fry, by the way, Union Park Tavern, and here comes walking in Senator Wirch. Hey, Steve, how you doing? Comes and sits down and he's talking with us for a half an hour. He was waiting for Peter Barca to meet up. So we're sitting down having a glass of wine with Senator Wirch. And where do you do that? Do you do that in Washington, D.C.? Do you do that in New York or Chicago? No. But in Kenosha, oh yeah, Senator, here, come on, sit down, have a drink. That's the difference, Bob.
Mm-hmm. Great. Anything else to top it off, Steve? Any other great memories, anecdotes?
Well, that's the big thing, and I think being in a town where you have Milwaukee here, Chicago here, but you're here, you know, and you can kind of keep that and go there when you want to. That's really something. But the progression that Kenosha has made through the years, I think, is very impressive. That really is, because I've been to areas you don't see that. I've been to places that I've been to 40 years ago and they're still the same. Mm-hmm. You know, this is progress. You know, and the things that are coming up. The mayor who recently announced his retirement is talking about the Chrysler area, the innovation. What, you know, I'm sure that takes time. Mm-hmm. You just don't snap your fingers and poof, there it is. You know, it takes time. But think about what that's going to be like for that area. It's just, mm-hmm. You know, and then we were on the interstate going someplace, going up and down, you know, in Kenosha County, even into Racine County. man, I remember when the only thing out there was the brat stop, and we could still drink at 18. that was good. But you know, when you think of it, and now all the stuff that's out there, and so it's not just the city, it's the surrounding area. You know, it's the county, it's stuff that's out in the county. I mean, and you look at what Kenosha, look at the golf courses Kenosha has. Another plug, Kenosha County Golf Courses. I play at Pets Wednesday, it's great. But, you know, and this has become a destination, and if people don't believe that, just look at the Illinois license plates.
All right.
People are coming here, and people in northern Illinois know what this is, and our leadership has a lot to do with that, and just the physical presence has a lot to do with that.
We have 7 miles of lakefront access.
Yeah, yeah. And you're getting people that come down because they want to know that history. And I mean, there's some real history in Kenosha. You know, you can go back to Southport days, things like that. And, you know, the other thing I always remembered was the docks. And I knew a lot of guys that worked at the docks. And when you thought about back in those days, the shipping that came in to that harbor, and the evolution now to the marina and all the nice boats and stuff, because we like to walk the dogs by the lake, because it's just, you know, hey, we're fortunate to be right here. You know, number one, the scenery, the beauty, and also it helps with our weather. I think it deflects storms. But, you know, you see the marina and stuff going on, and just, it's great. Glad I was raised here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, thank you. And on behalf of the Kenosha History Center and Kenosha Community Media, thank you for taking part in the award-winning Kenosha Voices Oral History Project.